friends, and welcome back for another Brutus Monroe video. This is Cassie. Today I'm going to be using the Farmhouse Friends stamp set. This one's one of my faves, so we are revisiting that one. And then we're going to be using this slimline stencil called the Star Wreath. Super excited to use that because clearly we are making a slimline card. So I'm using whitewash cardstock, and I have a piece trimmed down to 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And then I also have another piece that is cut down to 7.5 inches by 8.5 inches. All right, let's get started with our stamping. I'm going to use this little sheep, and we're going to stamp him a bunch of times. I just had this thought in my head, and I thought, let's do it. So I'm going to start stamping at the bottom of my whitewash cardstock, and I'm also stamping on this piece of masking paper. You got it. We're going to be doing some masking. So I stamped 2 on the masking paper, and I'm going to trim those out. Yeah, I know, fussy cutting. Some of you are like cringing, but we're doing it anyway, and I'm not being real careful. So I might have chopped off part of legs. I'm not even sure. But a lot of him is black and white, so it's not a big deal. I'll stick him down, and then I'm going to trim out my next one, and then I'll put him down on top of the other one. We're going to start stacking these babies. And remember, when you're masking, whatever you want to be in the front has to be stamped first. So I've stamped those 2 on the bottom because there are our front runners, and then I'll move those masks around as I need them. So at this point I'm thinking 2 masks is plenty, so I'll just pick up each mask and move as I need to. And it doesn't have to be perfect, honestly. No one's going to look that closely. And at this point I'm picking them up and I'm moving them to the side sheep, and it's here where I'm like, oh goodness, I should have stamped a third one, a third mask. But honestly, I decided against it, partially because I'm lazy and also because I really didn't want these to be too perfectly stacked, if that makes any sense. I didn't want it to go 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start stamping them, and they're going to be willy-nilly, and they're going to be all over the place, and it isn't going to matter. I am just having a good time doing all kinds of stamping. And so we'll work our way, and we are going to try to get all the way to the tippy top. And like I said, as you'll notice, it looks like some of them are a little cockeyed, and we've got 3 in this position, and we're going to put just 1 more at the top. So I like that it is a little bit chaotic. I mean, they're all standing on top of each other. It's perfect. So I'm going to fussy cut that out. I'm going to throw away those masks because they are very saturated with ink. And then we're going to get ready to do our next step, which is get that background going. I'm going to take my next panel of whitewash cardstock, and I'm going to use some Pixie Spray on the back of my Star Wreath slimline stencil. I learned that because it's a pretty delicate one, you do want to make sure that it sticks to the paper pretty good. I mean, it's not going to tear the paper, but this Pixie Spray works perfect to make sure that your stencil isn't going anywhere. Because I tried this once before without it, and all of my stuff just kind of seeped underneath. So we're going to be using the Velveteen Glazes, and if you haven't used them before, you haven't seen them, you're in for a treat. These are so cool. They look like, in the jar, they look like the Chroma Glazes, if you've seen those at all. But these end up drying so different. They have a matte finish to them that's just different, and it does give it like a velvety look. So that first color I used was Pink Flamingo. Then we're going to be using Banana Split, and I'm overlapping them a little bit. I want that because I'm trying to get the rainbow look. It's clearly not going to be perfect, but that's okay. I don't need it to be. And then we'll wipe off our spatula in between, and I'm going to grab this last one, which is called Blueberry Bushel. And I'm just, putting it down, and I like how well these end up blending to make the new colors. So if you just can't get all the colors, which I have full set syndrome and I kind of want all the colors, but these are the only 3 I have right now. You have to work with what you have. You can mix these to get other colors. All right, so I'm going to grab my Stencil pal, which is basically this flat backed thing. I don't even know what you want to call it, silicone, and it will spread that out so that it'll be nice and uniform all the way across my stencil. And as you can tell, I've grabbed some watercolor paper, and I didn't want to waste really any of that stuff, so I'm putting it on that, and I'll have another little background for later. And I'm going to peel off my pieces, take those to the sink and clean those off, and then we're going to let things dry. I did walk away. I did some tasks. I, worked out, showered, and then even went to the post office. So I don't know how long this would actually take to dry on its own, or if you could heat it. But I promise you I will be trying that in the future just to see if you can. But it dried great, and it just gives this velvety texture. It's really cool. Now we have to get our card pan or our card base all scored and ready. So I'm scoring that at 3.5 inches. And so this will be a slim line, obviously, as I've said. And now I want to get those sheep put on there. But before I do, I've just decided they look a little bit flat. So I brought in my T1 Copic marker, and I am not being very careful. I am just sticking down some color so that it has some variation. And here comes my quality control manager, Miles, checking it out. And so far, I think he seems to be pretty happy with what I'm doing. So he's going to jump down and leave me be. But yeah, so now that that's all colored and ready, which I love the sheep, you don't have to do a lot to it, really. I'm going to grab some Brutus Monroe foam tape, and I'm going to put that on the back of my sheep. And I'm not going to make sure that it's all completely covered. I just have about 3 small strips, well, 2 big ones and 1 small strip. We'll peel off that release paper, and then we're going to stick that right down on top of our velveteen piece. Oh, it's so pretty. And with those white sheep, that background really pops. For our sentiment, we're just going to stamp from the whole herd right onto the middle of this scrap that I had left over. And I did it that way, and I'm not trimming it down because I found that this is actually the easiest way for me to adhere a sentiment without cutting off too much and then making it all wonky. So I'm going to take 2 small pieces of foam tape, and I'll put that on either side of those sheep. And then I am going to take my, peel off the release paper, put a little bit of liquid glue on the back of our sentiment where our sentiment is. Obviously, you don't have to put it all over that back, just where the sentiment is. And then I'm going to adhere this down, trying to center my sentiment. Like I said, this is how I have discovered, for me, the best and easiest way to actually get a sentiment centered on there. So yeah, I have all that excess, but it's not a big deal, and I can save those chunks if I really need to for future sentiments. All right, now I'm going to attach this down to my card base with that same liquid glue. And I don't know where I went wrong, but I trimmed something down somewhere. So I have a little bit of excess on the top of my card base. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to trim that down. But right now I'm just trying to make sure that everything is adhered pretty well. This did get a little bit warped with our Velveteen Glaze, but that glue made it dry pretty quickly. So now I'll stick this inside of my trimmer and I'll trim off all the excess. But I can't leave it there. I have to do something on the inside. This will probably end up being a birthday card. And I like to leave a lot of room for all of us to sign. So I'm going to take the sheep from the stamp set again. And I'm just going to stamp him like he is poking out the side and they're all standing on his back. And I didn't even need to do the masks. But I can't have 4, got to have 5. Need an odd number. And so there we go. I love it. Turned out great. So once everything's cleaned up and put away, that's going to finish off our card for today. I love that Velveteen Glaze. It's so pretty. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.